Hey, Hound Dogs, I'm David Hankins.
I'm Paul Hankins.
Welcome to On the Air with Power Squared. This week's special guest, Don Nguyen, is with us. Say hi.
Hello, how are you, Hound Dogs?
Thank you for doing that. We always like to talk a little bit about how we met each other, and I believe it was through, we were just talking about that before the show, I think it was through Instagram, right?
Okay, yeah, I feel like it was social media somehow, but then we met in person. I
Yeah.
want to say it was at a con.
I think it was the 2019 Comic-Con, which seems like a decade ago. But yeah, I think it was at a booth. And we've kind of kept in touch, which is good. And we saw you again at LA Comic-Con when you were the special guest of the show.
Yes. Yeah, you guys dropped on by, and that was kind of nice to be able to reconnect face to face after what we have been through and are still going through.
Oh yeah,
scarily enough.
But
it was nice.
I will tell you, I was very impressed that you knew who we were when we walked up. I thought that was very nice. He said, "Hi, David." I was like, "Hey." Okay.
I introduced myself. I remember you guys. I think it was a Comic-Con, and we were maybe at the Geekscape table, and it was
I think you were.
Yeah, so I was, Jonathan Linden, and I think it was Paul, his partner, who was there, and then I remember you guys came up, and we talked a little bit about the story. But I almost feel like we might have met before that event. Like, did you come to the Comic Creator Connection panel that Toucan Learning does by chance? Were you guys also at that?
Well, we went to Comic Creator Connection. Doug. Well, when Doug Neff was moderating it.
Yes, yeah. So that's where we met.
Oh,
so
okay.
You were part of that group, yeah.
Yeah,
because I usually remember, like, if anybody out there is watching or listening, San Diego Comic Con, CCI Comic Con International runs San Diego, runs WonderCon, and Doug Neff and Corey Rothmel put together a few fantastic panels actually. Yeah. One of them is the Comic Creator Connection panel, which is sort of like speed dating.
Yeah, that's how I describe it too. Yeah, you have like.
So I think we met
there.
Oh. Yeah, and then you guys came back down to hang out at the booth for a little bit and chat.
Yeah, we went to there like 3 times.
Yeah.
And never actually could connect with anybody,
Really?
On a long term. Yeah, we would. Doug, I remember Doug always says at the end of it, before you go to bed, write to 3 people. And so the first time we went, it was like we started the morning at like 5 a.m, and by we got back to the hotel around midnight, and I'm trying to email the people, and nobody responded, and we thought a couple times thought we'd found somebody, and then they would sort of disappear into the ether.
Yeah, fell through.
Yeah, so
it's tough.
Yeah, so we found our first artist on Facebook, because there's a Facebook connection thing there as well.
Nice.
And then when we moved on from him, we used we'd had our colorist had come from Savannah College of Art and Design, so they helped us find somebody through there. So Rachel, who's our current, has been with us since issue 6.
Yeah.
So and for those who don't know, SCAD is a fantastic school, Savannah College of Art and Design. A lot of fantastic teachers that work in the comic book industry are out there, so shout out to them. I have a buddy who graduated from SCAD.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough. Like, obviously you guys have been through that process where you sit down, you only have about, I think it's 5 minutes they give us.
I think it's 3, or you're on 3, off 3, or something, because there's way more writers than there are artists.
Yeah, it depends on how many people are in the room for sure. But from that, you can see how many people. It's one of those, like, you separate the cream from the chaff. Cream rises to the top, right? So, like, the people who are constantly a part of that, and I met a lot of people and I respond, but if you guys have ever talked to me, you know that I'll tell you usually I'm busy on a project and I can't get off of that. But that doesn't mean necessarily that we won't be able to collaborate in the future. So that's always another thing, is I keep people in the back of my mind, and I always hope to see people from that event show up in the future or show me their work, and hopefully we can share that work and bring it out to the public, because I really do believe in pushing that event and what Toucan Learning, Doug and Corey do, which is fantastic work.
Did you ever link up with somebody through that?
Andy, yeah.
Oh,
Andy Nordvall. So Andy had pitched me this wonderful idea, and I always kept it in the back of my mind, but I didn't have time because at that point I think I was doing storyboards for a film, but he was like, hey, do you do Inktober? And that year we collaborated and we did our Project Siren Song, and we were the first team to take all 31 of Jake Parker's prompts, Jake Parker being the founder of Inktober, and we created the first story out of all 31 prompts beginning to end as a narrative. And that book, it was 2017 we did that, and then 2019 that book went #1 on Amazon Kindle in sci-fi and fantasy illustration, and top 100 in print, which is insane. We beat out a Star Wars book, which was #2 behind us, 2 Legend of Zelda art books, and I want to say a Metal Gear Solid art book. Just nuts. So I will forever have that graphic to cherish. Star Wars is one of my favorite franchises, properties, fandoms, whatever you want to call it. And I would love to just lord that graphic over every Star Wars film.
So we did some research on you and found out you went to UCLA and studied art.
Yes, we are opposites, a Trojan and a Bruin on screen together. Can you
I know. Well, I actually did. I went to the PhD program at SC and never actually got the degree. But
oh no! What was your field?
Well, it was cinema theory and criticism, which is not what I went. I didn't. It's a long story. I went there. Okay. I went there to. I had done. I'm from Texas originally, and I had done some. I did my master's at the University of Texas, and I wanted to come west, and I was too kind of I wanted to have get another degree, and applied for the production. They used to have a PhD in production at SC. Yeah. Well, I applied, and I was told, well, it's really hard to get in, and it might be better if you did critical studies and then transferred over. So, so I applied for critical studies. They let like 3 people into that program when I got in. And then when I got here, moved to California, started school. So I like to transfer over to, see about transferring over to production. Oh, we got rid of that program years ago. I'm like,
oh no.
Great. So I thought I'd at least stick it out and see what I could learn, but it was a lot of stuff that had no bearing on making a film. It was more how, reading a film and all this, psychological and not cultural, but political ways. Yeah, and I was like, okay, this isn't really. And I love film history, the critical stuff. I could never get into. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So I kind of. How was I tell the story? I kind of screwed myself over by. They have a meeting where they talk about what you can do, and I said, well, I don't want to teach. Because to me, teaching is like having been in prison, and when you get out, the only job you can get is being a prison guard because you're just on the other side of the bars. That was not an analogy they really loved, and so I kind of knew my days were numbered there. But I just didn't want to. I didn't come to California to go teach in Iowa, or something like that. Yeah. So
were you looking to do filmmaking? That's what you.
I was hoping to do screenwriting, but then I sort of had to get a job, and then you get married and you got to support yourself, and then sort of became sort of a secondary thing. And then when we decided to actually do a comic book, that was kind of cool because then you could use some of the writing, that kind of stuff.
You use your skills.
Yeah. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Now, I for some reason thought you were in the entertainment industry.
I work at Lionsgate Films.
That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah. But I'm in the rights management side of things.
Oh, all right. So still a part of the industry.
I've been in the industry off and on for like 20 years, but not, actually in anything that you would see my name on.
Hey, as long as you know what, I always say I'm okay being a background player in comics, even though I draw comics. It's just like, I feel like it's sometimes it's a support capacity, and I just like, you want to be a part of that particular field. But that's hilarious. I actually have a very analogous experience, which is I thought the UCLA art department, because I originally was in like pre-med undeclared biology, and I just did not enjoy it at UCLA. And I came from a biology background because my high school was biology, and it was intensive. And when I got here, I just hated it for like 3.5 years? Yeah, almost 3.5 years. And I decided in junior year just to switch and try to get into the art program. And they told me the same exact thing, which is you're never going to get into this program. And I didn't know it at the time, but UCLA was the #1 art school when I applied because of the strength of faculty. but I didn't also know that it was theory based. Like it was all about art theory and studio. They were pushing studio art, and there is very little technical knowledge to be had. In fact, the most technical class I ever had was photography. Like intro to photography was the most technical thing. But other than that, like I was like, oh, I want to draw comics. They were like, nope, we don't do that here. Oh, well, I guess I'll learn some other stuff. So I actually became more of a performance and sculptural artist when I was at UCLA, and having that theory in your back pocket is fantastic. But I enjoyed my experience, thankfully, and I feel like I've parlayed it well into other arenas. But yeah, that's interesting that you came into a department here that told you that you could switch, and then it was completely wiped out.
Yeah. Oh, we stopped doing that years ago. Oh, great, thank you. Yeah, so it was.
Anyways,
it had some fun. You had sort of a similar experience with your writing at CSUN.
Yeah, I got my bachelor's at CSUN in English. It was creative writing focus, although it felt more like lit theory with creative writing tacked on. So I did the fiction writing certificate at UCLA, and that was a lot more craft based, which is what I wanted. Yeah. So I learned a lot more about the craft of writing by doing that, and then I also I was originally trying to figure out how to write a novel, and I also learned how to write TV animation and video games.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we've all had an experience where we ended up in theory. We want to be practical.
Gotta put it to practical use.
So how do you describe your art style?
My art style is kind of all over the place. I feel like if we're just talking about art in general, but my comic book style in particular, I feel is somewhat cartoonish. I don't really lean into a realistic style or head towards realism. That's not my thing. And that's in part because of speed. Like I want to be able to draw things fast and get projects done and out. And I feel like I've had a pretty good reputation when it comes to that. So I hope to continue to deliver in that way. But yeah, I try to make my work, still always working at it. It's try to have it be dynamic and fun and engaging, and hopefully people come on board and stay on board. And I feel like I've been very, very fortunate to find some great people out there who support the work and who come back, return to see what's on the plate next. And obviously, we see each other, so we're in that circle of people that we constantly run into, and it's always good to see familiar faces at events, especially if somebody's like, oh, I'm going to be coming out with something, and they come back at an event and they show it to you. It's like that's a really good feeling, and hopefully I feel like part of what we do is to foster a community that does that. So yeah, I try to encourage it as much as possible. But yeah, my style, I think, somewhat cartoony. I like drawing goo monsters, so I'm huge into characters like Venom, for example. And yeah, I just keep practicing and hopefully keep getting better and better.
So who would you say has influenced your work?
I was a 90s kid when it came to comics, so all the people that I really loved were all essentially the founders of Image Comics, right? So I grew up, my favorite Spider-Man ever drawn back in the day was Todd McFarlane's. That was kind of my gateway. And, I had read Spider-Man's by, Ditko and Romita and stuff like that before then, and it was just like, that was great, but for whatever reason, Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man really stuck out to me just because it looks so crazy.
Yeah.
All the little, lines and etchings that he would do when it came to inking and pencil work. And then Jim Lee. I mean, Jim Lee's Jim Lee.
Yeah.
But, so those guys were my initial gateway, I would say, into how I started thinking about comics. But it wasn't until maybe a little over 10 years ago that I rediscovered my passion for comics. And that was spurred on by me walking into my local comic shop, which I hadn't visited in like a decade. And the three artists that stuck out to me, and I've talked about this on other shows, were Chris Pachalo, Humberto Ramos, and Scotty Young. And when I saw those guys, because their work is towards the cartoony side,
yeah,
It's very like animated. It's very expressive, and that brought me back into comics. And I was like, this is what I want to be doing. And I feel like I take a lot of stock in the work that they do and inspiration from it. And that was the jumping off point for me to come back into comics. And I think at that point, I want to say Roberto was working on Civil War, Wolverine, and then Chris was on X-Men, and Scotty was on the new X-Men. Essentially, it was like New Mutants.
Yeah.
So you didn't get obviously it was more theory at UCLA than you liked.
Yeah.
Are you more self-taught, or did you go to somebody who sort of kind of show you how to draw comic books, or? You know?
I'm self-taught. I feel like a lot of kids who love comics and start out drawing comics, they just pick it up by looking at comics.
Yeah.
And that's really the best way to start. Of course, everybody always references how to draw comics the Marvel way. Almost every major artist you find will talk about that book. And that was a pickup I had maybe when I was, I want to say 12. I'd gotten that book. And I still have a copy. I still have my original copy of that. I saved up for quite a while to get it. And then sometime after high school, my best friend actually got it signed by Stan Lee for me.
Wow.
Which is amazing. So I have it squirreled away somewhere. But yeah, so I would say that's kind of where that fell into place. Yeah.
So do you draw digitally, or do you draw on paper and pen? I mean, how do you?
I draw both. Yeah, I draw. It's funny because a lot of the work you see that's in print that I do is digital, and people will ask, "Well, why do you work digital?" And it's because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
I don't have to buy paper. I don't have to use markers. But when it comes to commissions, when I started doing commissions and tabling at conventions, my first convention I want to say was 2019, Rose City Comic-Con.
Uh-huh.
I started taking commissions, and I went back to working traditionally because I love working traditionally, and if people are paying me, I want to give them a tangible product. So yeah, that's all straight up marker and paper. And I stopped using pencils except for colored pencils because I don't want to braid the paper and I don't want to do a lot of erasing. So nowadays I just work straight marker. I work neutral tones in grays, and then I build up from that, and then I go back and I color it. So if you ever see Workman, that's how it comes about.
Okay, yeah, it was 2018 was your first convention. I looked that up.
Right.
You announced this. You're going to your first con in 2018. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about conventions, because everybody, COVID has been sort of a shutdown for a lot of people, but you have been on the road last year hitting a lot of cons. Did that seem safe to you, or was it just the opportunity to be kind of out there when most people maybe weren't? Or
I was vaccinated, so I was doing what I felt on my part to keep myself safe, and I believe in wearing masks. It's funny because I have family that my family has a lot of doctors in it, and they're Republicans. They will tell you get vaccinated. So if anybody out there is listening, let my family of Asian doctors tell you go get vaccinated. They think that you're not vaccinated, you're dumb. That's what they'll just tell you bluntly because they don't care about your feelings.
Great bedside manner.
That's true. My family is harsh. My cousin once was talking about grades, and my aunt told him, if you get a B, you don't belong in this family. And I was like, oof, why would you tell a little kid that?
It's a high bar.
Yeah, it's a high bar. But we came back, and this was the original strain right after that, and then I guess we were talking about Delta at that point in time. This was the latter half of the year already. So, Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, at that point, the original San Diego Comic-Con was canceled for summer, and they brought that back as special edition in the winter. And so a lot of people felt that because I guess it was sort of in that fall to winter time, we'd be a little bit safer. And then most of the conventions had, they were enacting mask policies. They had vaccine or negative test mandates. And Omicron wasn't an issue then. So nobody was thinking, oh, it's going to be a complete super spreader, and we're going to be trapped inside the building. I think there's concern about it now, and the hope is that most people have their booster shots, and they're working on an Omicron vaccine booster.
Right.
So how that goes. But yeah, this year's kind of up in the air. I have an event scheduled for March 5th and 6th in Colorado, so we'll see how that goes. And then WonderCon is in April, the 1st and the 2nd, I want to say. So right after that, the month after. So we'll see how the rest of this year goes. But yeah, for the most part, all the conventions I went to, I didn't really feel that much in terms of apprehension and being at the event. The most apprehension or trepidation I felt was really being on the plane. So being on the plane was what kind of freaked me out the most, because you're really in close quarters at that point. And I think at the point that I was traveling, like, planes were just full capacity. They weren't seating people like every other seat anymore.
Right.
So the entire time I was on the plane, I was, like hand sanitizing.
Rubbing all over your face now.
Yeah. And I had a full N95 mask. So I have KN95 masks and I have N95 masks. And my N95 masks were reserved just for being on the plane.
Right.
And then when I was on the plane, I just tried to zonk out and not interact with anybody unless, the flight attendant was coming by to be like, would you like water or Coke? And I was like, all right, we'll save that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't feel that I was in danger really that much. At least I felt like I was trying to keep my protocols in place where, it wasn't that much of an issue. And I felt like most of the crowds at most of the events were really cool. The only time I thought it was really interesting, and this is not to say anything about, FanX Salt Lake City as an event, but more in general of just the Utah areas. That was the only time I was like, oh, kind of nobody really wears masks around Salt Lake City. And I think they were in the place that we were kind of at, like a few weeks before we had that surge, which was, we were just kind of re-emerging from the pandemic, and we were like, oh, we can like kind of go out and be outdoors again and like sit in like outdoor cafes, and then if we go to like a supermarket, we'll just have to put a mask on. And I felt like they were in that mode of like, oh, well, if we're vaccinated, we can just go in and not wear a mask. But yeah, it's also like, it's not about necessarily knowing who or not to trust, but I think it's more of just like that central idea of like, oh, if I keep myself safe, I can keep my family safe and my friends safe, then I can do what I can. But maybe other people don't necessarily think that way. And I think,
I know we were sort of shying away. We haven't been to a movie theater since the pandemic. And we actually squeezed in a signing like on September 18th. At Golden Apple, which is which was rescheduled from when it was supposed to be. We were scheduled for the Saturday after everything shut down in March of 2020. So we had to, so we finally were able to reschedule it like almost a year and a half later. And then we went to LA Comic Con. We had bought tickets along. We had never actually been to LA Comic Con. And we had tickets we bought, I'd say about a year ago, it seemed like. And just sort of, they kept moving the date and moving like, it was going to be a morning session only, and then they opened it up. So it was sort of that quasi-clear, it was just, COVID was out there, it wasn't Omicron, so, we kind of were able to sort of squeeze that in, I guess. But so we've been very shy about going out into public too much.
That's understandable, for sure. Yeah, the LA scene was interesting just because, you're right. I do remember they had to push that a couple times, even from the pandemic. And I guess a lot of conventions were going through that because once the pandemic hit, they were all waiting for force majeure clause of their contracts to kick in. So a lot of them were like last minute, oh, we're going to cancel or push the event. And, that leaves, exhibitors and creators that might be an artist salary be like, are we getting our money back? Like, what's happening with this event? So I know that was definitely a tough period, and I know, that's not a slight against convention and con organizers in any way. It's an understandable situation because they're trying to recoup their losses as well, so they've got to wait it out and figure out what's going to be going on. And then, they are under contract as well, so I don't even know how that works.
Yeah. They have to
yeah, it's tough.
So you went to the special Comic-Con?
Yeah, special edition last year, which was November. It was Black Friday.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun, actually.
Was it crowded? I mean, what was
Nope. No, it was not crowded at all. It was fantastic. Yeah, it's funny because I feel like if you talk to anybody who was an exhibitor there or a fan that went, most of them, I would dare venture to say the majority of people there had a fantastic time. Have you guys been to San Diego Comic? Oh yeah, obviously
yeah.
You met at San Diego Comic.
About 10 times, but
you know how crazy it is, right? Like,
yeah.
You are like sardines in a can.
Yeah.
At San Diego. That's really the best. You're constantly bumping into people constantly bumping into you.
And constantly being told to keep moving.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like you're swimming upstream.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was none of that happening at Special Edition. It was so chill and relaxing. And it was funny because I carpooled down, rather, with artist David Mack, who was famous for his watercolor work, co-created Echo for the Daredevil series, does Kabuki, just a fantastic artist, super nice creator. But at some point during the convention, we looked at each other and he was like, is it just me, or is this like the least tense event, like least tense San Diego Comic-Con that you've ever been to? And I was like, yeah. He's like, it's almost kind of relaxing. And I was like, yeah. And it's funny because there was, however the experience was at LA Comic-Con, I almost want to say the foot traffic was kind of similar or even less in some cases. But when people came, they came to like talk to you about what you were doing. They spent time at your table. I met people who actually knew who I was, which was amazing. Because if you ever heard me talk about it, everybody thinks I'm Dustin Nguyen, and it was nice because Dustin was one of their special guests there. He was at a table like down, so people are actually coming and they're like, "Oh, I heard you have a cover by Dustin Nguyen." I was like, "Yes, I do. Thank you for not bringing me your Batman comics." But he was fantastic, and he was so gracious to sign all the Pablo comic covers that he did. So shout out to Dustin Nguyen, who has Batman Robin going on with Jeff Lemire right now, and they're launching a new series coming up soon. But yeah, it was a relaxing event. I felt like people had a really good time, and the thing you heard everybody say was just that it was a comic book event again. You didn't have the fanfare of the movies or entertainment or like that specific aspect of the pop culture arena that looms over us so heavily at a lot of conventions. Yeah. And people were there to just enjoy picking up artwork, meeting artists and writers, picking up their comics, talking to them. And yeah, it was a great time.
Well, good. It was part of it was Thanksgiving weekend. It was kind of and but I used to go to a long time ago, before I was married, I lived in LA. I would go to some conventions on Thanksgiving weekend because there was like after Thanksgiving there's not much to do, but it was just the idea of going out. It's we go to Comic-Con every year, and it's like this. It's a big, huge money suck just to hotels. They raise the rates like 3 times as much and stuff. So.
Yeah, I feel like that was part of the consideration maybe of why they did it on that Black Friday weekend. Was because most likely nobody from anywhere else was flying in. It was going to be expensive to stay there, to fly in there, so that crowd is eliminated. And then locally, they probably figured it's going to be people who don't enjoy the company of their family, or people whose families enjoy this sort of thing.
Yeah,
that was probably going to be who would show up. So. As far as I'm concerned, they did a really good job, and a lot of people I felt like walked away from the event really happy that they could just be there as comic book fans for comics.
I was trying to kind of worry about Comic-Con since 2 years in a row they've had to cancel all their events. You kind of worry, that's I'm sure where a lot of their money comes from is the events itself. So it was good that you were able to support them. So let's talk a little bit about your creation, Pablo the Gorilla.
Oh, there you go.
which is you signed it for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Sure. So tell us, how did you come up with Pablo? And
So Pablo the Gorilla is an albino cyborg gorilla that delivers pizza. He just wants to live a normal life, but unfortunately the government that created him, they want their property back, and he's being hunted by something a little more sinister from his past. That came out in 2019, funded on Kickstarter, as you guys know. And like I said before, I was honored to have Dustin Nguyen do a variant cover for me. I was hoping that 2020 would be the convention debut where we would be traveling with it, but obviously the pandemic put a kibosh on that. And then I was able to bring it around to conventions last year, and the response has been great. And now I am working on number 2 right now, which is one of the projects we were just talking about earlier that I'm on. I also have a cover, and I'm doing something again for Upper Deck, and so hopefully we'll get all that done within this very first quarter of 2022, and then much like you guys, we'll be launching a campaign. I'm also got a comic that I worked on with Michael Tanner from Junior Bravesley Apocalypse from Oni Press. We're going to be launching Battle Grapple Rebel probably the end of March, beginning April, just to coincide with WonderCon. And hopefully catch that crowd there. And I think that's going to be a fantastic project, which I hope people will stick around for.
Okay. So do you like working with a collaborator or working solo, or does it depend on the project? Or
for Pablo, I wanted it to be my very own thing. So for the first issue, I did it like everything. Yeah, like nuts to bolts, right? It was all me. And then, I had people that would chime in and give input, but for the most part, the writing, the artwork, that was all me. But I actually really do love collaboration. I feel like that's one of the biggest things that we have going for us in comics, in our medium. And it's always interesting because, nobody sees the script the same way when it comes to art, and then no writer, even if they sort of deal in the same thematics or come up like the same general idea of like a character, like that character is not necessarily portrayed or conveyed the same way by the writer, which is why you obviously we get a lot of reboots from the big 2. But I was talking about indie comics, like you and I are part of that community of indie creators, and it's an incubator for ideas. It's fertile ground. That's where some of the best stuff comes out of. And in a way, we're a little bit underappreciated, but I feel like since the pandemic, more people have opened up to indie comics. Obviously, Kickstarter is one of the biggest producers of comics. They overshadow the big 2.
I think a lot of people,
the big 3, the last few years.
I think a lot of people just sort of survive Kickstarter to Kickstarter sometimes with their comics. Yeah. So I like when we'll send the script to our artist, and she'll come back and she'll have, let's say, I've merged these 2 panels. She sends us thumbnails and says, I've merged on this version, I've merged the 2 panels. On this one, I've made an extra, and so we'll kind of go through that. And a lot of times it's like, okay, she was trained in sequential storytelling, so okay, that makes sense, and we'll do that. We've changed some things around just because of her input. So I like that part of collaborating.
Yeah.
I mean, so it sort of brings another side to it that maybe you didn't see or didn't think about when you're writing the thing. So it's nice to have that input from somebody else.
I really feel like once you guys are in that mode of where it's true collaboration, and sometimes you'll have some pushback, and then other times you'll get that spark of inspiration in talking about like how a panel goes. Then maybe it'll jumpstart another idea for like your overall story. I mean, you guys are almost 20 issues in, you said?
We're working on issue 20.
Yeah, so you're working on issue 20, and that's like that the spark or the impetus of that, like going from that one, just getting that first one out is like so hard. To be able to have 20 issues, that's incredible, you guys.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a labor of love or just being really stupid. We just keep doing
it's gotta be both.
Yeah. No, I do love doing them, but it's right now I've invested more in producing them than we're obviously making off of them. But that's hopefully it's a long haul kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But how do you guys feel about your fans? Like, do you feel like your fan base has really enjoyed the work that you guys have been putting out? Has been really supportive? And guys are meeting a lot of new people that way? Oh, you guys are getting fuzzy.
Yeah. Maybe that's on purpose.
Oh, there you go.
I have no idea. People don't really. We don't get a lot of fan feedback, do we?
No.
Yeah. So we're still trying to grow the fan base and hopefully doing shows and having people on that, help. But I don't know. I don't know if we actually have a fan base. Is the downside.
You would be surprised. A lot of people lurk. I remember the first time that somebody came up to me who actually knew who I was. It still blows my mind if anybody knows who I am. I think they know me a little bit more now that I did the Jerry Conway Black Lives Matter BLM fist design for Skulls for Justice. But before that, like, somebody came up to me and told me they knew me from Inktober, and that I just didn't know what to say. I was like, wow. So you never know who's paying attention, who's watching you guys, who really enjoys the work. Just keep putting it out there. Hopefully I see you guys at more shows.
Yeah, we have to actually get a table or something, but it's you have to like pick those out way in advance, and so we're still kind of squishy about whether or not when we're going to be back in public, I guess.
Yeah.
We're sort of hanging, with the covers up to our necks.
No, I get it, especially right now. With how Omicron is going, it's kind of nuts.
Yeah. So, what made you decide to pursue art as a career?
Some might call it insanity. I feel like I'm really good at what I do. I hope other people see that. I've been fortunate enough that the people who I've worked with see it and come back time and time again. Same thing with doing commissions. And I'm trying to grow that base, and hopefully more people enjoy the work and enjoy what I do, and the projects that I'm a part of, the stories that I've been honored to help tell. They come back and they support that, and I feel like I've been super lucky in terms of the things that I've been able to accomplish the last few years. For example, I was in the Nightmare Theater anthology that Clay Adams and David Schrader do, and that book was mentioned on Comic Book Resources as like the #1 book to pick up from LA Comic Con this past year. So things like that, hopefully other people see what I've been able to be a part of, and they enjoy that work. And I feel like a lot of us creators, we're out here just hoping that what we do inspires somebody else, sparks interest. People love what we have to say. People agree with what we have to say. Maybe they don't agree with what we have to say, but they find it challenging to their thought system, to their belief system. And that's maybe just a little bit of what we can accomplish in terms of what we do out here, making our funny books.
Yeah, hopefully people will read and buy the T-shirts and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, and you guys, I love the shirts. Can you flash that up a little bit there? Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
that's a really great concept. I think. What conventions have you guys done? Like, have you guys tabled already at any conventions, or were you saving it and then pandemic just crushed it?
We did a really small local convention.
Yeah, the San Fernando Valley Comic Book Convention or something like that. Yeah.
Although it wasn't really the right avenue for like new stuff. It was more focused on like collecting stuff that already exists.
But we did actually, I'll say, we did meet somebody who's, I think, our biggest fan there. Yeah. As a matter of fact.
Oh. Well, there you go. You have a fan.
Yeah, the one. She was there for publicizing some movies she was in, and she came over to be nice and, wanted to be supportive, and so she bought a couple of issues, and then we've been keeping up with her, Sue Price, and she's been very supportive of us. That's awesome. We had her on the show, and it was our largest view so far of any of the shows on YouTube and stuff. So it was very, so it was really nice. Out of that, we did meet somebody that actually liked our stuff. But it was mostly there for people that were going through books, boxes looking for, I got this back issue and that kind of stuff. It wasn't really for new stuff. But it was interesting. And then we've done a couple of signings, but very small. We did one at the local comic book store on Free Comic Book Day in 2019, I think.
Yeah.
And then we did the signing at Golden Apple. Yeah.
Ryan and crew out there, they're nice guys.
They're
Ryan
nice.
Joe,
We were sort of out there also handing out. It was also Batman Day, so we were all supposed to hand out.
So we were also showing the
Batman the free books they were handing out. And
if anybody at DC is watching, I'll show Batman all day for you guys. That's the thing. Talking like you guys found that one fan, and a lot of people don't understand, because I feel like there are some people out there that think, oh, if you're into comics, it's you're just out to make money, and like you guys are all doing well, and we all know that's not true, especially as indie creators. Nobody gets into comics for the money. That is the common refrain of our business and industry, especially when it comes to indie creation. So like working in comics, you're fighting for inches, right? Like you're just trying to gain an inch every day that you're out there. You're just looking for that one person who will listen to what you have to say. And it goes the same if you're tabling at a convention. Part of that, you don't want to be a carnival barker. We all know that's bad etiquette. But you want to be able to like see people walking by and just go, hey, you want to come check out what I have? Or let them know what you do is interesting. I think you guys have a really cool idea with Power Square. And I don't know if you guys have been to other conventions outside of the state, but I think like a convention like Rose City Comic Con, I can't stop talking about Rose City Comic Con. That was my first convention. I love the Portland crowd so much. But there, you got to find that one crowd that is, they're readers, right? And there's fantastic conventions out there like Rose City Comic Con, Baltimore Comic Con. There are people there who want to read, want to consume literature and art.
We do know we need to get out. It's just the timing of it, I guess. We did apply for an artist table at Comic-Con, as a matter of fact, before the COVID hit, and they were like, well, we're not, the people that already signed up, and so I don't know when that would ever come through for us. But I was surprised as writers you could have a table. So,
writers you have a table, but it's a little bit more of a fight because you're not out there just making, like, most of my table costs and what I recuperate comes from commissions.
We'll do commissions. They'll just look like crap, though.
And there are writers that do that. In fact, Michael Tanner once told me, I think he was doing it as a joke. He had a little sign as he was selling Dream Rays of the Apocalypse on his table, and his sign was terrible art, I think, for like however much, and people were actually getting commissions from him. And then one lady was like, "This is bad." And he's like, "That's what the card says. It's terrible art."
We have we bought some badges from
those buttons.
Yeah, it says "Not the artist."
Oh yeah. I've seen those. The pins. Yeah.
So
those are great.
Yeah. Well, so who is your? Do you have an ideal reader? We always ask that question of people.
I guess ideal reader / target demo.
Yeah.
Whoever likes my art. No, my ideal demographic when it comes to Pablo, like everything has its own audience, I feel like, and you have to find the person who is going to like that particular thing. So when I pitch Pablo, I pitch it as an indie comic inspired by indie comics. If you are a fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Hellboy, The Crow, Tank Girl, if you love James O'Barr, Mike Mignola, Jamie Hewlett, any creators like that, Usagi Yojimbo, Stan Sakai, then Pablo is going to be a comic I think that it's right up your alley. However, if you're a fan of things like Pirates of the Caribbean or Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth, then Siren Song, our Inktober project that I did with Andy Norwald, that's going to be up your alley. Apparently, I once told my friend who was like, "Oh, you should do horror shows." It's like, I don't really do horror that much. And I looked at a lot of my comics that I've been working on, and most of them have been horror. Like 2 Cthulhu books now, and 3 Cthulhu books actually. A project is about to launch soon. And then recently did the Holiday Spirits anthology with Travis Gibb and Jerome Gagnon. That's a horror book. So yeah, you just, like I said, you have to find your audience and be able to pitch to that person. So if you guys are doing conventions, and you see somebody with a shirt that has math on it, definitely call that person over and be like, we got a book for you. Someone's got Einstein, theory of relativity, the Pythagorean theorem, Euclidean plane, any of that sort of stuff, Cartesian, just be like, hey, we got something for you.
We actually have, we use the Napoleon theorem as a portal in our story. So
nice.
Yeah. I looked at it when that looks kind of round. That could be like a portal, so we have somebody that could move through that. So you gotta go with the stuff.
Just gotta find that demographic.
We have a whole.
Do you guys?
What?
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, do you guys know the Sketchy Bugs at all? Have you met a bunch of us?
No, say no.
No. So one of the most fantastic Sketchy Bugs is artist Maxie Rodriguez. She does Chubby Bunny comics. She does. I call her the zine queen of the group. She does a ton of zines, and she does like the zine events and stuff. But we were in Portland, and she was having a moment. And I was like, don't worry about it. You just have to find your audience. And sure enough, like her audience is now on TikTok. I think, I don't want to misquote and say something wrong, but I think she's closing in on 170,000 followers. She has a video that has like over 13 million views. Wow. So again, it's just about finding your audience.
You keep hoping you'll go viral with something, but it never happens.
You hope, but for me, it's even just about finding that one person who's like, hey, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so how would people find you if they want to follow you?
Oh, I believe
right behind you.
My shoulder right there. Winning It. Trademarked. And you can find me on most social media under @WinningIt. So Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, winningit.com. That's all me.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me on, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Always happy to see you guys. Glad to see you guys at LA Comic-Con. It was a rare treat because I feel like
I do appreciate the fact that you were like, hey, David, we walked off. I was like, he knows who I am.
I mean, my memory is not the greatest, but when it comes to particular things, I try my best to remember people, and obviously you guys are very memorable, and just happy to see the family at an event. And it was really touching to do conventions last year because I feel like so many of us were apart from each other for so long. To be able to see some familiar faces, meet some new faces, get books into hands, fist bump people, and then sanitize right afterwards. Even doing that sort of silly stuff. It was comforting to know that there are still good people out there who are supporting and making things, on both sides, if you will.
Okay.
All right, so if you are watching this on YouTube later and you like this sort of thing, leave a like, subscribe, and consider ringing that bell.
Okay, well, thanks again, Don, for being on the show. So until next time, I'm David Hankins.
And I'm Paul Hankins.
And you've been on the air with Power Squared.